Great. All right. Hello there, everyone. Welcome if you are watching this live or if you are catching this uploaded to our YouTube channel post program. Thank you so much for being here tonight, tomorrow, whenever you are seeing this. We are so glad you are here for this important conversation. My name is Sarah White. I am the Community Engagement Coordinator here at the Northampton County Historical and Genealogical Society, and I am joined by our neighbors just up the street from us. So glad we can actually sit down and talk. Um, what this program will look like is we will have a certain period of questions and answers, questions as a conversation format between Kate and myself. I will give her the floor in just a moment to properly introduce herself. I don't want to speak over anyone here. And then we'll open up to questions from the audience or questions that we have heard in our professions and as we are having these important discussions. So Kate, let's start off with a little bit about yourself and what led you to choosing this path and to working with Nurture Nature.
Yeah. Hi, Sarah. I have been at Nurture Nature Center for a little more than 10 years now. And I have was born and raised in PA, and I always have loved the outdoors and was very much interested in science, but I also really liked art when I was in school. However, they kind of pushed you to choose one or the other. So I chose science and I went and got an environmental studies degree at Ursinus College, which isn't too far. And then I got a master's degree at the University of Delaware. And then I went and did some work for the Pew Charitable Trust, which was in Washington, D.C., and realized that I'm not a big city person. I like my city smaller. And I decided to go back to the Lehigh Valley and get a PhD in Earth and Environmental Sciences at Lehigh,
Okay.
which was a really great experience and gave me a lot of technical skills for understanding earth sciences. I went and did a postdoc with the USDA following that, and it was then that I was reached out to by a past advisor who said, there's this great opportunity I think you would be perfect for, and it was with Nurture Nature Center. So I went there, I met the staff, they were all lovely and wonderful to work with. And then I saw the Science on a Sphere, which is this 6-foot globe that hangs from the ceiling. And I was, as most people are when they see it, you're mesmerized or like, this is the coolest thing ever. And I want to just keep looking at it. And I saw a great opportunity to do more to connect people to science and the love of learning than I could do just staying in academia and doing research that is needed, but you're limited sometimes in how much you're able to interact with the broader public and making those connections. So I decided to try the nonprofit world, and I've been there for over 10 years, so it worked out well.
Yeah, I hear that. I hear that. And if some folks, especially if you are from Easton, you've probably heard of Nurture Nature. If you are a little bit farther out in the Lehigh Valley, or you're catching this from elsewhere in the state or in the country, tell us a little bit about who Nurture Nature Center is and what y'all do.
Sure. Do you mind if I share some slides
Absolutely.
to kind of, I think it's awesome to show in addition to tell.
Mhm.
Um, so for those that are not familiar, we are located, like Sarah said, just up the street from Siegel Museum, and we have what we do, especially that we find unique, is that we try to integrate science, art, and community in all of our programming. So what you'll see throughout our building is art gallery spaces, community meeting spaces. You're seeing an example of a meeting up there in the top, and then that Science on a Sphere and some other science exhibits that you see down below. And so we have all of these exhibits, we offer presentations, we offer lots of activities, but really trying to merge that science and art connection and how that builds up community. And our mission really relates to nurturing knowledge and connection with the local environment and your community and building up literacy around local environmental issues. We got started in response to flooding that happened in Easton in 2004, 5, and 6. So initially, we were really focused on flooding and doing community outreach around flooding, what the risk is, what we can do to prepare, having conversations with our community about flooding and trying to get us all on the same page there. And we've expanded much since then, and we're continuing to expand as we speak. Our building is getting an addition to the back part of the building to add a dome theater that will be 75 seats, and we'll be able to have planetarium shows, but also other cultural and theater performances, and still, true to our science and art and community integration. We also do a lot with workshops. We have class visits that come, so we offer a spectrum of programming from youth all the way up to adults. We are seeing some examples here of what those look like. We have a really popular program every summer called Create and Learn that kids love. And they come, and once again, it's doing a creative hands-on art-based activity, but it's also integrating science in there so that you're learning something, but you also have something fun that you're doing that's hands-on and you can take home. And then we also do a lot with astronomy. We have star parties that have become really popular. And they usually host them down at Scott Park when the weather is cooperating and the viewing conditions are good and there's interesting stuff in the night sky. You can go down for free and check out what we could see and talk to our educators. And so this is just a reflection on how the flooding was. If those of you are familiar, that's Hotel Easton is now the Grand Estonian, so you can see how far up that water went. And we have always tried to get our community to remember that these hazards are ever present and actually growing in risk with climate change. So we try to have a number of programs and community events that keep that in our consciousness.
And I know that like everything that you're saying, it to someone who maybe doesn't know nurture nature, it might seem like a lot, but honestly, folks, that is not even scratching the surface of what they do. Like we'd be here for days if we went through every single program. But some of the things that I really want to highlight, like on a communal level, is we just took down one of our temporary exhibits at the museum. Um, the name sort of started as a pun, as a little joke, but we called it Warehouse Valley, a changing landscape. Um, and the exhibit was 19th and 20th century oil paintings, one of which is my virtual background right now that overlooks the Delaware River. And those were transposed next to drone footage of what that same location looks like today. And you may imagine if you've driven through the Lehigh Valley for longer than 10 minutes, much of it is now warehousing. So one of the reasons that I was excited about doing this kind of program is to highlight some of the work that Nurture Nature is doing to mitigate the effects of this development, to mitigate the effects of climate action, and what are some of the very, even somewhat basic things that everyday folks like you and I can do. And a lot of the community initiatives that Nurture Nature does, such as like the Urban Recycle Garden or pocket parks throughout Easton. I know you touched briefly on the flooding and we live in a floodplain. We're at the meeting of two rivers. Like it's gonna flood occasionally. But That being said, what are some of the things that we hear in the community that led to these kind of initiatives?
Yeah, so I think I'll hop to here. One of the things that I think you highlight, it's so important, Sarah, is being a listener, right? Like listening to the community, providing a space for people to share their ideas and experiences. And we have done this a number of times over the years and always have found it very fruitful. We did a community needs assessment where we went around and did tours of the community, talked with people, did forums to talk with them. We collected their concerns, photos, stories, and were able to put together this really cool exhibit that you can see there that we called Easton Matters. Everybody came, we had a conversation, they were able to see the images there. And this was one of the first projects I worked on when I first came to NNC. And the thing that really struck me is as a scientist, I was coming in and the main question was, what environmental issues matter to you?
Mm,
And to me, environment is the natural environment. Like that's because that's what I study.
right, yeah.
But some of the responses were, I'm concerned about being able to safely cross my street,
Mm,
or more health concerns or sidewalks, like things that are the urban environment.
mm,
But for me, I was like, well, that doesn't, like, did they not understand the question? But they did. I had to expand my view of what environment meant.
mm,
And so for me as a scientist, that was really eye-opening that you come in with your own biases and perspectives, and you really need to be in that kind of open space to listen and hear what other people are really saying and what they're concerned about. So it was a lot of about trash litter in the community, having green spaces, concerns about their health, air quality. Obviously, the Lehigh Valley has an issue with air quality that's somewhat out of our control because of, topography, but there are things we can do to address it. And then really just, that led to us developing different types of programming and trying to find ways to help people understand or take action related to these things that they were concerned about. And then one of the main things, you mentioned climate. This is something that we've worked with the city of Easton a lot. The mayor is a big proponent of taking climate action and signed on to an international agreement back in 2016. And since then, we've been helping, kind of move us along the way. As part of that agreement, we do inventories of, how much emissions are we, releasing? What climate action are we taking? Setting a goal, like we're going to reduce our emissions to net zero by 2050. Creating a plan, understanding our vulnerabilities to flooding and extreme heat, how they're changing with climate, and then also engaging our youth around this because really the future is theirs, right? Like I'm, in my middle ages and have already seen like my children, their typical average temperature is much warmer than mine was, right? Or will be because of how rapidly the climate is changing. And that's scary, for me as a mom. And wanting to be able to not only try to stem the changes that are happening, but recognizing that these are happening and we need to adapt. We can't just sit here and say we're not seeing the impacts because we are, and there are lots of things that we can do, even on an individual level. And so one of the things that we have really strived to do at NNC is to keep a hopeful message when we're talking about climate change, because it can get very depressing very quickly. And we really want to focus on everybody has a role to play in the community. We all have strengths. We can bring those to this issue. And a lot of the things that you can do have benefits well beyond just reducing emissions. They could save you money. They can, help with air and water quality. They can increase the value of your home. They can help with your own personal health if you're walking more than driving, if you're eating more plant-based, like those things have multiple ripples of benefits. And it just makes sense to do. And so we've carried that message of trying to be more hopeful with a youth climate summit that we do every year. And this has grown over the years too. And we have, and we're currently planning our seventh one, our seventh annual one that will be next spring. And it's great to see how passionate youth are about this topic. And it gives you a lot of hope to see that they have that passion and, drive. And so one way that we try to keep that hopefulness is, again, combining science and art. And this was a project we did where we asked youth to rewrite the story of the local climate change, focusing on local positive stories. And the way that we had them do this was Carrie Maxfield, our art director, designed this book jacket template. And if you think about it, a book jacket is a really great way for conveying a story very succinctly and effectively. And, in this short little time that you have to look at that jacket, you're able to distill what it's all about. So there's the image, there's a title, there's about the author, there's, a brief description about the crux of the issue, the story. And it's a really nice way of kind of pulling in strong visuals to share information. So they did that, and that was really, really fun. They liked it. We had it as part of an exhibit in our center that was actually alongside like a national level exhibit. So the youth were really excited about their work being shown next to, national artists. And this is an example of one of them. Madeline was a student at Lafayette at the time that she participated, and she actually did this project where she took plastic shopping bags, which, are hard to recycle, and everybody's trying to, reduce single-use plastics. And she actually wove them into waterproof sleeping mats that she donated to Safe Harbor, which is the local homeless shelter. So it was taking a problem and turning it into a solution. And so she put together this story that's really nicely, shown here in this book jacket format. And coincidentally, Madeline then came and, had an internship with us, worked with us, and then she's now getting a master's degree. So it's really wonderful to work with the youth and all of these things. I think I may have gone on a tangent. I'm trying to
Okay,
get
no, that's good. That's good.
ahead. Um, you had asked about what people could, so to getting back to the urban garden side of things. On a way to get there, I just want to highlight one of the projects we're
Yep.
currently working on, um, which is, hopefully it's gonna update, please. There we go. We call Create Connections, and this is a project that was federally funded, and it's focused on education and outreach around the climate action plans in Easton and Bethlehem. And as part of this, we're doing a lot of education around climate, specifically the actions that people can take, but really developing partnerships throughout the community. We've been working closely with the libraries to develop, programming that goes on for families. We develop these, what we call climate action strategy spotlights, and you can see an example there that's geared towards renters. So if you're a renter, here are things that you can do that may apply to your situation. Because a lot of, often there are all these like, oh, you should do this, you should do that, and you may look at that and be like, well, I don't drive, or I don't have control over, my building you know, how it's set up, if I can put a tree in front of it because I rent. So we try to really target it so that it's not off-putting to people. And we have a number of these spotlights that we've done. We've geared them towards both different types of audiences, like students is in this one, but also different topics. So one of them is growing your own food, and they're really supposed to be bite-sized pieces of information to get you excited about taking action. We put a little bit about, well, why would you do this action? A lot of it, at least in this one, is emissions coming from transportation to get some of our foods, especially if they're out of season. If any of the food has to be transported by air, that makes a huge environmental impact. So one of the things you can do is just grow in your own, garden. It could be a pot on your porch or a little container on your windowsill, or it could be, volunteering at a community garden, or there's lots of those, and I'll get into some of the ones that are in Easton in a second. Or, going all in and planting a whole garden in your backyard if you have that option. So we provide different levels of actions that people can take depending on what their time and resource availability is, because we feel that action shouldn't be, limited.
Right.
And yeah, so and one of the things that we have done in the past was trying to highlight more about that being able to garden, especially in a very urban downtown like we have in Easton. And Nurture Nature Center has always had an urban recycle garden where we've recycled things like an old canoe or shoes and, put soil in them and grown things from them. As you can take anything to be a vessel for the soil. Plants just need, sunlight, soil, water, and they flourish, right? So we wanted to highlight that beyond just NNC, and we did. We kind of revamped our own urban recycle garden, which is sadly not there anymore because of our construction, but it will come back. It will come back in some form. But we wanted to highlight what else was going on in the community. And so when we had our urban recycle garden, we had a number of things in there like rain barrels, and we had signs that talked about the importance of rain barrels, and we had pollinator species and talked about the importance of pollinator and ways to demonstrate stormwater management. And then we grew food and we offered them as a free little garden to the community. So anybody could stop by and harvest. And so these are some examples of the signs that we had in our garden. This one is talking about, you can really help with runoff and mitigate flooding by having ground cover. And it doesn't have to be complicated. It's just simply, having grassy areas or different types of plants that you can go all in and do rain gardens, which are beautiful and really effective. But you don't even have to go that far if you don't want. It's just really trying to reduce that amount of impervious surface, which helps. We had a sign that talked about the different types of plants and how they have different functions and why we chose the plants that we did. We had an alleyway that had very poor soil. You could consider it a gravel garden. But there are plants like mosses and poppies and many grasses that actually thrive in environments like that. So if you have a particular area that you're like, I'm not sure I can grow something there, do a little research, reach out to someone or go to a garden center and say, I want to have something here, but I'm not sure what I can do. I'm sure there's a plant that can help you. And then we had, like I mentioned, one about pollinators and the key role that they play, not just in the ecosystem of a garden, but in our food system. We would not have all the foods that we have without pollinators. They are essential for a robust and healthy food system. And they are not just bees. Everybody, a lot of people think and honeybees do a lot, but there are wasps and butterflies and other species of insects that are, very critical for pollination. And many species will adapt to certain plants. And so that's also important to understand the need for native pollinator flowers and other plant species to support them. We had 2 rain barrels in our garden, and these are really helpful for not only managing, those heavy rain downpours that we often get, especially in the summer, and they're projected to increase in magnitude and frequency going forward with climate change. But they also can save you money, because if you have to pay a water bill, why not just get the water that's there free, that's
Right.
actually could be causing a problem with erosion and runoff on your property, save it in the rain barrel, and then you use it to water your garden or your plants or anything. So we had that demonstrated in our garden, and we, talk about this. And it's some of the statistics are just really mind blowing. Like in just a 1-inch rain event, we can collect 100 gallons of water. So it's really an effective measure that it doesn't really cost that much to get these barrels. And even some local organizations sometimes offer them free. So it's something to look for. This is a QR code that people can take a picture of and get a link. I'll also give the link to Sarah. She can put in the chat. But we did a tour of the community, and I'm not going to go. Sorry, let me share my screen with that one. I'm not going to show you all of it because it's it could be long. I'm just going to stop my share to make sure I'm on the right thing. All right. So this is a story map, which is basically just an interactive online map slash website that allows you to see different things from videos or just text. And we went around to our community and interviewed different organizations or community members about what they were doing to keep green spaces and garden at home. So we have Holly Hauser, who is a close neighbor, and she has a wonderful garden. And so you can go here and then you can click.
We are lucky enough to have off-street parking in the West Ward, and the rest of our yard we have turned into a garden. We've got rid of all grass, and it is a lot of veggie beds and flower beds as well. So a lot has just been completed. This was our big COVID pandemic stay-at-home project, and we're pretty proud of it. So come on in. Right inside, we have fruits and berries. We've got some berry bushes and raspberry bushes. Along the fence here is our strawberry patch. It failed on the other side of the garden last year, so this has turned out to be a better location for it. So we've got our 3 Caldner apple trees here. This is their 2nd year, and our middle one is already starting to produce some fruit. We're super excited. We've wanted to have Caldner apple trees since we bought our house 12 years ago, so this is a dream come true. One of the things that we've done in our garden is use these galvanized tubs. They're really expensive for a really big planter, and having more control over our soil quality was important. There was a lot of garbage, glass, just stuff in our dirt when we were digging it up, so we were able to add it up. We opened up the bottom of these so the roots have room to grow, but it also provides a nice little localized watering, so we're not watering the whole ground. We can water right in there, and we know it's getting to the roots. Over here, We built 4 giant raised beds. Part of that is because we got a puppy and he was digging in our old beds and we wanted them more raised up. They're so much easier to weed and they are a lot easier again to water because we can get right to the roots. Unfortunately, we lost all of our zucchini due to vine borers. They're disgusting and we hate them. But we're moving along and now we've got clear space for some fall planted crops. Broccolini is coming in and spinach, kale, lettuce. So all of that will be planted in the next few weeks, direct sown from seed.
All right, so I won't go through all of that, but I welcome you all to come and check these out. We also looked at some of the pocket parks. This was on 7th Street. So I'll just show a little bit from Amy about this.
Hi everybody, my name is Amy Bacadoro. I am the manager of the West Ward Community Initiative, which is a program of the Greater Easton Development Partnership here in the city of Easton. Today we're going to be visiting a couple of the West Ward's pocket parks or smaller parks that are here in the neighborhood to look at how they enhance our community. So we're going to start today in my favorite park here in the West Ward. This is Dutchtown Park. We're in the 600 block of Walnut Street. So as you can see, Dutchtown has a variety of mature trees which provide a ton of shade for the community. It's a great place to stop, play. There's picnic benches. Our summer pop-up and play program with the YMCA happens here 3 days a week. We also have a lot of grass, as you can see, and mulched areas. So little macadam, lots of places for water to be absorbed and not run off into the neighborhood as well. So one of the unique things about this.
All right, and then there is a community garden in South 10th and Pine, and we have a short clip with Miranda for that one, and then we toured Jim Bloom and Lynn Fraser. They have a wonderful property with rain barrels and gardens. We did one for the Lower Hackett Community Garden. We did one for the microforest that is also near there with Rob Christopher, who works really hard to keep the city's green infrastructure thriving. And then we also did the Easton Urban Farm, which is on the south side, with Mark Reed. And they have a lot of cool opportunities there as well. If we have time at the end, I can play more of these, but I just wanted to give a taste for what we had showcased as part of this project. And then I wanted to go back to this, talking about urban agriculture, because that is the theme that we were going on for today. So all of these examples are examples of urban agriculture, and there are ways to not only influence the climate impacts and take action. They, are able to provide you with food, and they're able to really kind of change the community structure. And it's something that most people are able to do. So it's not a limiting action. The way that urban agriculture has been defined is pretty, all over the place, but they loosely define it as, food and products within the limits of a metropolitan area. So they include everything from all of those community gardens that we showed, school gardens, rooftop plots. They could also apply to urban farmers market. So Easton's farmers market would be part of this. Any community supported agriculture that you might be a part of. All of that is considered part of this, urban agriculture framework. And so, for these purposes, there's several main types. There's the home gardens, There's community gardens, which are a little larger and they serve a neighborhood, and you could grow food there even if you didn't own it. Then there are urban farms. So these are larger scale. They tend to be owned by for profit purposes. And the reason why urban gardening has, I think, grown and is really important is for a number of reasons. They're listed there. We've been, coming at this from the climate impact angle. I mean, if you are able to walk out to your back porch and pick a tomato, it's going to taste yummy, like really yummy, especially compared to the grocery store. But you don't have all those emissions from transportation. You know what was used to grow it. There's not concerns about pesticides or any of those things. And it, offsets a lot of the negative impacts of the more industrial, national, international food systems. But urban gardening also helps with social reform. It helps kind of areas that are in disrepair remake themselves, have more of a sense of agency and independence. It helps with food insecurity, especially in locations that might not have access to an adequate grocery store. So this can supplant that and really get those healthier fruits and vegetables that might not be available at a corner convenient market. It helps with supporting local businesses. If you're going to the local farmers market, it develops community connection. You might see the same people over and over at that farmers market, develop friendships. Maybe there's a gardening club that you can become a part of. You share your zucchini with your neighbors. There is, a kind of a funny thing where people, when they have too much zucchini, they just put them on their neighbor's porch and run away. So there's a lot of benefits beyond just growing food for urban gardening, and just wanted to highlight some of those. And we've been doing this for a really long time. When I looked into this, I was, not necessarily surprised, but just the extent of which this has been within the human evolution is really extensive. From back with the Hanging Gardens of Babylon, Egypt had lots of fruit and nut trees even in their city centers. And then probably most people are familiar with the victory gardens. So during World War I and World War II, they were prioritizing certain supplies and food for the war effort, and so people at home really had to kind of scrounge and be more conscious of what they were doing with purchasing and having supplies. So they really promoted what they call victory gardens. And they actually, this statistic just floored me, that 41% of all consumed vegetable produce in 1943 was because of people gardening at home. And this is something that we can do, that we have done, and it really makes the whole system more resilient and robust. Because if you have all of your lettuce coming from one central location and they get destroyed by a hurricane, what are you going to do? Obviously, there will probably be backup companies or farms around that can help fill in the gap. But, if everybody in town has their own little garden, it's more resilient, it's more robust, and people can pull together to help if there is a disaster. More recently, in the 1970s, urban agriculture actually became very connected to social justice and environmental sustainability. And if you're interested in exploring more, there's a really great website that I have down there, and I can share these slides with you, Sarah, after this. But some of the issues with that was because it was post-war urban manufacturing. A lot of the factories left some of these communities, and these urban areas were really, desolate and reeling from that source of income that had left. So gardening became a way for these communities to get that sense of agency back
Mm.
and say, we're going to rejuvenate our areas and attract more residents by, building up our urban agriculture. And then I think everybody probably who's listening to this experienced COVID and the pandemic, and that really did expose the fragility of our global food supply chain. And it raised the awareness of why we need to make local food production and urban agriculture a key part of our food supply system. So we're not devastated when, something massive happens that takes out, some of the larger players that we've come to rely on at the
Right.
grocery store. But there are challenges with urban agriculture,
Mhm.
and these are listed here. I'm certainly not an expert, but just highlighting for anybody interested. And there's a website called Healthy Food Policy Project
Mm.
that has a lot of resources to about this. So if you're interested, you can check it out. But, there's codes and zoning that really limit what can be done.
Mm.
In Easton, um, several years ago, there was an effort to have backyard chickens. And we
Remember that?
had a forum, a community forum, where people talked about it, but the zoning and it still has not worked out. So there can be actually significant limitations on what you can do. That said, you can go to city council and say, I'm a resident here in Easton. I think this should be changed.
Mhm.
So there's ways to change this. It's not set in stone. But there are restrictions on how some land can be used, and that can limit access to resources. It can ban or restrict what activities you can do, like composting.
Mm.
And so zoning is a really critical tool to be aware of,
Mhm.
to understand what can be done with urban agriculture. So we had a couple of those videos that show community gardens and even backyard gardens in that tour. But there are these main gardens of Easton. The urban farm on the south side is very open to people getting engaged and helping. There's the Lower Hackett Community Garden. If you go, if you could even Google Gardens of Easton, and this website will come up
Yeah.
and give you links to all of these. Lafayette has their own farm.
Mm.
They also do composting there. West Ward has a community initiative. And just wanting to highlight, that even our hazard mitigation plan for the valley
Mhm.
really focuses on how we need to ensure a resilient future, and that includes sustainable agriculture. And urban agriculture can be a key part of that. And so one of the things that Buy Fresh Buy Local of the Greater Lehigh Valley, which is a project of Nurture Nature Center and led by Megan McBride, one of the things that they are really focused on is how agriculture can help the climate situation.
Mhm.
Not just the impacts on agriculture, but the other way. It's a two-way street. And so regenerative agriculture is a huge approach, movement that helps with this because it's looking at the full cycle, the full ecosystem, and integrating that. It's really a smart approach, like looking at this from a science lens, like we're not isolating this tiny piece and pretending that it doesn't affect all the other pieces.
Right.
Like
Right.
we need to consider the whole. And so this really talks about the soil and how important the soil is and keeping the soil covered, healthy, minimizing the disruption to the soil, integrating diversity. If you only plant corn, it's going to deplete certain nutrients.
Mm.
You want a diversity of things so that the soil is healthy. We are all healthy. I mean, they say to eat a rainbow. Why you should also grow a rainbow, right? Like it definitely needs that. And this is very well seen. Like these are examples that we hear about from our local farmers is that once they start these practices, they could go from the soil that you see there for 2019
Mhm.
to that dark, rich soil that they had in 2021. That's not a lot of time. Like that's
Mm.
just a couple of years that it, can really improve the quality of that soil, the nutrients in that soil, so that you get more nutrient and healthy foods. So, um, this is, there's a lot of research out there about this type of agriculture. It's very scalable. It grows more food per acre. It increases microbe growth, leads to more plant growth, and it draws down more carbon, so it really helps with the climate impact. The local farmers that are using this are listed here. The Hunter Hill CSA in Easton, which may be available to a lot of you,
Mm.
is one. Lafayette is using it. And then there's others around the area that have it. And if you want to know more about buying local and supporting local farmers, this is Megan's contact information. You can go to Buy Local GLV, which is Greater Lehigh Valley,
Mm.
and find out a lot more information. You can get information on the local farmers markets, what fruit and vegetables are in season. There's a great number of resources available. Um, so I think I will pause there to see what your questions are, but I do have other things I can share, um, if we have time and it's makes
Yeah,
sense.
I mean, personally, I could go for days, but I think we will reach a point where Zoom will eventually kick us off.
Yeah.
So, in the interest of time and not getting cut off, um, there's a couple things that I want to highlight for everyone too. And primarily that all of the information presented tonight is readily available is like an understatement. I mean, I went on the Nurture Nature website, nurturenaturecenter.org, for not 3 minutes, and all of the gardening information, all of like the easy steps that we can take, even a potted tomato plant, right? All of that is laid out explicitly, clearly for all of you. You don't have to, uh, you don't have to dig. First pun of the night. You don't have to search very far to find this information. And the second thing that I I stress personally, I know Kate, you stress this personally in your work, and just based off of the kinds of organizations that we work with in our jobs, but also just in our day-to-day life, community really is everything, like 110%. There is no part of this that we can separate ourselves from and just say, you think you're going to grow one tomato plant or one basil plant, and real quickly that spirals out into, well, now I know my neighbor likes beans, so I'm going to trade him some beans and he's going to grow this. And then all of a sudden I'm going to come home from work one day and there's going to be a bag of zucchini on my porch. Like, that's just the nature of the work, right? And I can't have it any other way, and I wouldn't want to have it any other way. Because if not, what's the point?
Yep. And it's also really cool to see, if you have young kids, like this is, gardening is a great opportunity to teach them responsibility. And you don't have to, clean up poop after it like with a dog.
There
I'm
you
not
go.
saying,
Yeah.
I'm not, um, discounting the value of having a pet, but it
Yeah.
is a really great activity, and then they can see the fruits of their labor. There you go. There's the second pun of the night.
Uh,
I mean, and it connects you with the environment, right? It
right.
gets you off your screen, it gets you off your phone, it gets you out there, and you get something from it. It's wonderful, and it's something that you can do every day. Like in the summer, it's like, oh, well, I need to take a break because I need to water my plants and I
Yeah,
need to
yeah.
see what I can harvest. And maybe that informs what I make for dinner. And yeah, it's like you said, it's community. It's a wonderful thing to invest in.
And even just on a very simple level, like once I started planting my own lettuce, I can't go back. Like the first time you eat it, you're like, oh, that's what lettuce is supposed to taste like. Oh, this celery actually has taste. That,
Yep.
it didn't get shipped 3,000 miles and picked before it was even ready to be picked. Like when you eat a tomato straight off the vine and it's still warm from the sun, like you can't go back.
Yes,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
And then you realize why people need to put sauces on all of the
Yeah,
things
yeah,
that they
right.
get at the grocery
Because your food
store.
doesn't
It's
have
like,
taste.
yeah, so you have to add it back in later. But
Yeah.
yeah, 100%. Yeah. And again, like there are many options. Like if you don't have the backyard or you say I don't have a green thumb,
Mhm.
you can go to the local farmers market and
Yeah.
support there.
Yeah.
And they often have other things like music and activities and lots of fun things.
Mhm.
Or you just help out at a community garden. Like there's a range of things that you can do. And you know that you're supporting your community, you're supporting overall climate action, and it's fun. It's a fun
Yeah.
thing to do.
Yeah. And it's going to start with one plant. And you might say to yourself, I only have room for one herb. That's a lie. I learned that one the hard way too. Um, I guess from a community standpoint, as someone who like works with the community and does like this kind of programming, what are some of the feedback that you've gotten from community members on a personal level that like if someone says, I started composting, for example, like is that have you noticed how that feedback has possibly changed over the years, or have you heard that like community concerns have changed over the years, and how does what Nurture Nature offers then adapt to those changes?
Definitely. Getting back to that point about always being there to listen and try to be the connector. I think that's our biggest value is in connecting people to the resources or the other community members that can help them with whatever they're interested in or concerned about. We actually had a workshop earlier this year about composting, and we had someone who does worm composting come. We had Lafayette come and talk about their composting because we had heard in the community that there was a
Mm.
lot of interest in being able to compost and how do they do it and
Mm.
where do they take it and like they don't know how to do it but or if people that already are doing it they're like I don't know where to take it like what do we do and so there are some logistical and infrastructural
Mm.
constraints that the city is currently contending with, but they're working on it. And
Mm.
being able to hear that the community wants this
Aha.
is a big first step in getting those initiatives going and moved forward. Um, so that was a really cool thing is to bring those people together
Mm.
into one room and to have those conversations and people like just hearing their effusiveness afterwards like thank you so much for doing this, I learned so much, now I know who to go to, like
Oh,
that makes our jobs worthwhile,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then we did a follow-up workshop about seed saving,
Mm.
which stemmed out of the composting one because people were asking, well, I want to actually reduce my food waste, not
Mm.
just compost it. And so that led to, we have a seed library in our building, so you can come and
Mm.
get seeds if you want,
Mm.
and try different types of things that you're growing. You can save your own seeds. People are often astonished that you can, actually save
Yeah.
most of the things that you buy, especially at the farmer's market. If some of the grocery store things, you might not be able to save the seeds
Mm.
successfully, but
Mm.
a lot of plants you can, and then you can regrow them yourself.
Mm.
So we had a workshop around that, and that was well received as well.
Mm.
So it's really, I think, just keeping our eyes and ears open, listening to people, and then if we keep hearing about the same issue, we're like, oh yeah, we should probably have something and try to bring everybody together.
Mm. I guess on a last one final question from me before we hit our hour mark. If you had someone who came up to you who had no idea where to even start. Like they had read all this information and they were real excited about starting to live a little more in tune with their own community and with the earth, but they had no idea where to begin. What would be the one thing that you could say, like, you can start here and it will take you anywhere?
I think it's really looking to see what you are passionate about.
Mm,
Right? Like you can always follow other people's advice, but if it's not something that you're really passionate about, it's not going to stick with you. So if you're fascinated by bees, like
yeah.
go for, learning more about beekeeping and, maybe trying to figure out how to support local bees. If you are really wanting to help at the local level, there are many different ways that you can get engaged. There's Easton has an Environmental Advisory Council, or EAC.
Mhm.
They meet monthly.
Hmm.
These are volunteers who are just really passionate about environment,
Mhm.
and they take up a number of different initiatives. One, they were trying to document green spaces in the city. Now they're really looking at how to reduce plastics and also doing cleanups throughout the community. And then they're now looking at dark skies and, dark light pollution is a huge issue
Mm.
too, especially in urban areas. And it actually alters how plants grow, surprisingly. Well, I guess not surprisingly, but I just saw a recent study that said that, that plants grow slightly differently in urban areas where they have access to light 24/7 than in more rural areas. So you can focus on a passion or topic that you really care about.
Mm.
And I think that would be the biggest thing that I would say to anybody is like find that thing because that's when it's going to
Mm.
keep you going and drive you and make it not feel like it's a chore, right? It's something that you're excited about, you want to learn about, you want to do. And then, look around because there's a lot of stuff going in the community. You could easy thing, just go to the local farmers market on a Saturday. Just walk around. You don't have to buy anything if you don't want, but just, get a sense of the community, of what's available. Maybe talk to someone, try a fruit, maybe take home the fruits. Like there's little steps that you can take. And then thank you for pointing it out, but our website has a lot of resources. You can certainly reach out to me if you have something in particular you're trying to, get connected on. We're happy to help be those connectors.
Yeah, absolutely. And like we said earlier, we are 2 blocks down the road from each other. Come hang out with us. Come visit us. Like this is what we do. We love to talk to people. Um, Anything else you want to add before we wrap up? We are almost at the hour on the dot. So
Just a sincere thank you, Sarah, for reaching out and including us as part of this series. I think the more that we collaborate and break down silos, the better. So,
absolutely. Absolutely. Well, I will have to make it up. I know our schedules are generally like end of the week, so it's always a fun thing working at a museum because you can't go see other museums because you're always
exactly.
working at one. Um,
Yep.
but I make it a point to go to the farmers market, so maybe I'll,
Yes.
I'll pop into you one of these days. But thank you again so much uh, for
Happy.
all that you do, for all that NNC does. Again, if not for community, what are we even doing?
Yep.
Yep. All right. Well, we'll let all you folks go and have a nice dinner. And I will probably, I want to say get this up on YouTube maybe in the next week and a half or so, depending on how the internet decides to cooperate with me or not. Um, and thank you to everyone again. I know we'll talk soon for probably something or other.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
All right. All right. Thanks again and have a good night, everyone.
Bye. Bye,
Yeah.
everybody.
Good night.